We really want them to hurry up slowly. So when you want to move fast, you go alone. And if you want to go far, you go with others. That's a rather popular African proverb.
Welcome back to NeuroConversant Leadership, where we talk about effective leadership and communication, especially in the STEM workplace. I'm Jeremy Doran, and I love to help great engineers become great leaders. Today, we have a special guest with us, Suraj Ethirajan. Sure, I didn't get that right, but how close was I?
95% close.
Hey, that's not bad. I got an A.
That's great. Love it.
You are the founder of GroUNow. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what GroUNow does?
GroUNow, through this company that I started in 2021, I help both corporations and individuals in the workplace. In a very simple way to think about it is professional development. But for me, what's very important is psychological safety and becoming a leader that you would want to be. So that is the bedrock of how I help people become leaders and resolve conflicts and many more things like that.
What are some things that hold technical people, like engineers in particular, back from being great leaders?
I think overemphasis on technology itself and less emphasis on human connection and the non-technical aspects. Some might like to call it the messy aspects of dealing with human beings.
Messy, yep. Humans are messy. Life is messy. That's just kind of how it goes. But right. I know that a lot of engineers want things structured and in place. So what are some things that you do to help them make the transition from the technical aspects where things are always a certain way into the messier aspects and dealing with those well?
I think what's very important is to have a conversation first. And with engineers, they're more about let's go, let's get things done. So building trust for them to have a conversation, at start it is a little challenging, but it's a necessary aspect of how we engage and get results. And in that time, we really slow them down to open up on things that matter to them and how they can really tackle problems from a very different lens. Instead of trying to resolve it and rush to the solution. As an electrical engineer, I would use the term short-circuiting, but we really want them to hurry up slowly.
Explain that, hurry up slowly. I like it. I'm not sure what it means.
So when you want to move fast, you go alone. And if you want to go far, you go with others. That's a rather popular African proverb from what I'm learning. But in the same lens, when you slow down to understand what the true situation is, find the problem, and a well-defined problem is a problem half solved, distinguish between wants versus needs, then you come to the intersection of, do you even need a solution or not? Most engineers are a hammer to a nail when they see a problem and they want to solve it. But going through this process, can we just open up, observe more, and see, do we need to even solve the problem?
It's so interesting because I've found that in problem solving, the biggest issue is defining what the problem actually is. And I think of it as painting a room. The fun part of painting a room is getting that roller and slapping paint up on that wall. But it's not going to come out well unless you've spent the time and effort to do all the prep work, the scraping and the filling of holes and taping around the edges. And that's not fun. That's not the fun part. But if you want a good solution, that's what you need to do. And that's what defining the problem is. It should be, I think, most of the time, 2/3 of the effort should go in actually defining and only 1/3 go to solving what you found out was the real problem.
I think that was a brilliant analogy that you gave, because there's so much of prep work that goes into painting. And like you're saying, the dopamine hit is when you get that roller and you roll and you see the paint go and the ease of it. But it does come with all that prep work for you to not able to spill the paint or cause a mess or, not paint over where you're not supposed to paint. It's all about the preparation. And I think it's so evident when it comes to sports. It's so evident when it comes to perhaps many other professions. For engineers, we have done this through school, through college, through onboarding. We have done it, but we fail to remind ourselves to repeat that even when we are working full time.
I think that's the case for everyone, that they want to just go right to problem solving. Do you think it's more so for engineers?
Absolutely. I think it's for everyone, like you mentioned, but with engineers, we're double down on that concept. Think about it. All our exams, all our tests, they're all timed. So not only that you get rewarded for giving answers, you're rewarded if you can do it faster. And I think that conditioning is what gets engineers stuck, because real life doesn't work that way.
Interesting. I really liked the proverb that you had of if you go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go with people. Is that about right?
That's absolutely correct.
That's a good one. So engineers largely are problem solvers. It's what they do and what they love to do. What are some ways that you get them to be more collaborative in working with people, other engineers, as well as other non-engineers?
That's a very important question to ask and very important question to address. And this is why. Because when I think about college or any training, technical training that we have, it's like practice. There's no real world simulation. There's no real world headwinds that you experience. And we have this expectation for, I showed you the data. The data indicates we go in direction A, north, east, southwest, whatever that might be. But that's not how real life works. You got to get buy-in. And typically you get buy-in because it fits the narrative of the other individual. So even though you're an engineer, you're still going to see where you have skin in the game. Perhaps your promotion is on the line if you get a particular project out. Sadly, that might not be in alignment with the North Star metrics that the company needs. And these mistakes and missteps do happen. Understanding that why someone is doing what they're doing that seems illogical is very critical. And I think engineers typically oversee this and misjudge this and are quick to label people as either inefficient co-workers or not doing the right thing, things like that. And all of that is time away from getting the objectives that you want.
It's interesting. I spent a lot of time with the Myers-Briggs, and one of the dimensions there is logic versus emotion or feeling, thinking versus feeling. And it was recently explained to me in a way that made so much sense. The thinking people want to get the logically best solution, and it can feel so illogical when one of the more feeling people is saying something that doesn't make that logical sense. But what is important to realize is those feeling people are very in tune to your core values, both of the company and the person. So just because it's not technically the perfect solution, if it fits with your core values and achieves the larger goal that you want to achieve, that's what they may be looking for. And if you can step back and say, you know, logic is great, but following our actual values is pretty important too.
Yeah, no, I think it's like two sides of a coin. You can't just buy something with one side of a coin, you need the whole coin. And I think logic versus emotion, they do play. Now, I do teach people this. We are emotional, and that's what distinguishes us from robots or AI these days. However, I kind of feel that unknowingly, when you show your emotion, people use it against you. Mostly unknowing reasons. So it's in the best interest to not hide your emotions, but tame your emotions and set it up for situations or places or people who can actually have the wisdom to welcome it. So that's very key for all people, all technical folks or even non-technical folks. That being said, I think we need to develop this muscle to understand why someone would say something that is illogical or non-technical or opposing what the group needs to achieve. And we're a tribe at the end of the day, and we are stronger when we are together in solving these problems. Else we would have single people companies, and there's a reason why companies have the particular team size and roles and responsibilities. Just like a soccer team or a basketball team, you have different role players who have specific roles and positions that they play. And the best way you can move forward is by understanding people's, else you're not going to move fast. And that's why it all comes down to, again, hurry up slowly. When you slow down, you actually end up moving faster. by getting everyone on page. You can disagree and commit, but you have everyone working towards the same goal. Hopefully I answered that appropriately.
Yeah. So how do you recommend people get to understanding others?
I think is first of all understanding that everyone is unique and everyone's different. What I mean by that is you talked about Myers-Briggs. There's also this thing called love languages, right? Some people have words of affirmation, acts of service. There are many like that, right? There are, I think, give or take 5 or 6 love languages. So it's important to get the best out of the person. And in order to do that, you have to understand that from an emotional perspective. And I've seen this more often than none. Typically, if someone is against the grain and are working in a different direction, it's because their emotions are in the wrong place. They bring value to a particular aspect of the project or the technology development or business acumen, what have you. And it's not about people pleasing, but it's about getting win-win scenarios and win-win outcomes. And I'll talk about this more later as we expand. But in order to truly get win-win outcomes, it is inevitable, but to get people to realize that it's in their best interest to consider the emotions of others. Else they have a consequence of not getting what they want. And at the end of the day, no one wants a negative consequence. It's as simple as that.
It's so interesting. This topic has come up multiple times recently about individualism versus community. And we as a society have gone very far towards the individual and individual rights and individual accomplishments. But like you said, no person's an island, and getting a community to all be moving in the same direction is so much more powerful than everybody going really strongly in different directions.
Yeah. My take on that is, I think there are 2 aspects. There is an importance on being individual. What I mean by that is, it took me a long time to figure it out, and I think I'm just scratching the surface on this, so bear with me. I think it's important to focus on individual when it comes to growth, self-improvement. Rather than pointing the finger at others, what did I contribute for that misfortune? What did I contribute for when someone mistreated me or misguided me? For example, when I was a child, people-pleasing was my survival mechanism. Thankfully, I'm not in that position anymore. But it took me decades to figure out that that was hurting me in a corporate environment. So I think from an individual perspective, I owed it to myself to not blame anyone else, but to take it up. Now, on the other side, I want to address and support your statement, which is, in order to move forward, we have to move like a tribe. And it is our responsibility to be part of the tribe and do what's good for the tribe, because there is strength in numbers. We are a social being. For thousands of years, humankind has been doing what we have been doing, for good or for worse, but mostly good. And it all comes from doing things together. So I think while it is a responsibility to develop myself as an individual, I hold a responsibility for the people who have gotten me to where I am and the people that I need to take along with me going forward. So I think that's a huge part of working together. That's a responsibility.
I like it. And circling back to the leadership part of the book, Good to Great, I really like when Jim Collins, I think maybe Jim, talks about the mirror and the window. And the really good leaders, when something goes wrong, they always look in the mirror and they look at themselves and say, what could I have done to have made this better? And then when something goes really well, they look out the window and they say, look at what all these people did. It's so wonderful. But being able to always look at what you could have done better, I think, is very powerful.
Very true, very true. And I want to address that in a little bit more pragmatic way, because you have audience who are listening here and they're going to be of varied type, varied thinking. And what they're going to bring to the table is their own narrative. So when we're talking about the mirror or the window, someone might be like, I'm just going to take the blame for everything because I'm not good enough. We're not talking that. So if there's an individual like that, you are good enough. You shouldn't take the blame for when someone else does something wrong. You need to take accountability for the actions that you put forward for yourself and for the people that you lead. And I think that distinction is very important. So as long as there's a healthy balance in how we address accountability and give credit, that is very key. And if you don't mind, the way I like to view it is being assertive. And the best way that I can think of being assertive is giving and commanding respect in the same sentence.
Can you give me an example?
For example, if I did you wrong, I have to take accountability. But I also have an opportunity to thank you for being patient. Typically, if you're passive, you weigh more importance to the other person's feelings and you disregard your own. If you're aggressive, it's literally as simple as you paying more attention to your own feelings and disregarding the other person's. Now, the degree and extent from a scale of 1 to 10, that can vary. But at the end of the day, if you really look at it objectively, it's on either side of the middle mark. So if you take offense to someone being aggressive, even if it's a scale of 1 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, you are catering to their aggressive side. I think it's in everyone's advantage to, even in that situation, give and command respect. Because what typically happens, if you fight back, you can now invoke the other person to say, aha, you did something wrong. And that happens whether it's spouses fighting, co-workers fighting, what have you. And I think when you take that objective lens to give and command respect and talk assertively, you are always going to be in an advantageous position to have control on the situation, even when you have bad players, either people who are passive and are taking blame unnecessarily in an unhealthy way, or narcissists who love to bulldoze over other people. But the only thing that can mitigate all of that, giving and commanding respect in the same breath or same sentence.
I like it. And that goes against the whole idea of being passive aggressive, which is kind of the worst of both worlds. In my past, I've been passive aggressive, and you kind of look for ways to sabotage yourself when you're doing that. You're setting it up so that the other person's going to disappoint you. And then you're like, yeah, see, that person disappointed me. It's like, well, you kind of made it happen.
Right. And I think if I can add one piece to that, like I keep saying, from the individual perspective, what am I doing to invoke passive aggressiveness? So even with an enemy, and this is from the art of war, if you provide your enemy a golden bridge to retreat, the chances of them being passive aggressive diminishes. So I think even if you're dealing with a narcissist, you have in your power a certain set of tools to provide a golden bridge or to calm their lizard brain, and you can get a better version of them. I truly believe this. Call me naive, but everyone's good. Good people are capable of doing bad things occasionally. So it's in our best interest to calm their lizard brain down, give them a golden bridge, so even the narcissist can work with us more effectively.
One thing that I have heard and really liked is that everyone is doing their best. Whether they're doing well or not, they're doing their best, whether they don't have the tools or they don't have the emotional stability or maturity.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it that way, that everyone's doing their best, then even if they've done something to make your life harder, at that point you can say, what can I do to help them be better? They don't make my life more difficult going forward. If you look at it that way, it makes it a lot easier to try and reach across and help.
I don't think I can articulate it better than what you just did there.
Perfect.
So people who are listening, write this down and definitely stick it in on your whiteboard or in your desk or whatnot. That is as simple as it gets. Yeah, love it.
So on that note, we should just end the podcast right now. Like end on a high note. Done. So you, much like myself, work with a lot of engineers and other STEM people. Mm-hmm. And it's a broad generalization, but there is more neurodivergence within the engineering and STEM community. What have you found that people who have some form of neurodivergence, how does that affect their interactions and their leadership?
Yeah, and I think it's like getting multiple high performers together, type A personalities. Now, within engineering, you have, it's easy to see a spectrum of people, different types. But if you take engineering versus many other disciplines, engineers are all in one huge category of how they think, how they want to achieve, the limitations and the constraints and the demands they put on themselves. They're literally actually in one big echo chamber. But now you're putting them all into this pressure cooker, and they have these different ways of thinking. it's very hard for them to get along. It's like a bunch of North Pole magnets all put into one box, and they're all trying to like go away from each other. There's no south. So I see a lot of engineers do that, and the managers and leaders themselves are very much like that. So it's not their day job to figure out some of these psychological techniques, these leadership techniques that are outside of their domain. And I think that's where it's so very important to get some of these people to slow down and really evaluate what they're trying to do. And if they realize, and it can be done, the hard things are easy to do, but it takes a lot of effort to sit them down and get them to open up about what they're trying to do. And they themselves see that what they're doing is not serving them well to get the outcomes that they themselves want. That in return, that uncommunicated expectations leads to premeditated resentment. So a lot of these people are bumping heads and are not meeting their expectations. What's compounding the problem is resentment keeps building. So a lot of these high performers that build up their high performance stature and credibility, or not even credibility, but they have strength over organizations, but they break and they crumble, and it's a lose-lose because now they go through resentment and it's just a supernova at that point.
Being self-reflective and developing new skills that were not something that you necessarily grew up with takes a lot of strength. And being always successful and then all of a sudden running into a wall that you've never really run into before takes resilience. I know you talk a lot about resilience. I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit about how things you've gone through have helped given you resilience and how that's helped you in your corporate life.
Thank you so much for this platform, Jeremy, because this is a story that I love sharing. I don't get to do it as often, so I'm very grateful for you to letting me share this. I was 8 years old when the first Gulf War happened. Actually, at that time, it was the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. 8 years old, it was the first day of school, August 2nd, 1990. I still remember I was in the middle of getting ready to go to school. My dad had already left for work. And our neighbor, she came running and banged on the door saying, Iraq invaded Kuwait. There were a few scenarios along the way where it was unknown how things would unfold, whether this would last a few weeks, a year, we had no clue. And how do we even escape the zone? I still remember the first intercept point when we were leaving Kuwait as refugees through Iraq and Jordan, which was the only country that had its borders open. We got down at Basra first. So United Nations convoys, these are buses taking all the refugees. I come out and I'm an 8-year-old kid. I don't understand the gravity of the situation. I still remember I had back in the day David Hasselhoff's Knight Rider sunglasses. So it had the red light that went back and forth at the top.
Nice.
And I come out, I think I'm all cool. I'm the kid. And this older Iraqi kid walks up to me, and I don't speak Arabic. But he comes and it's very clear that he wants my sunglasses, my Knight Rider sunglasses. And I said, no, I'm not going to give it to you. Next thing I know, I'm on the dirt on the ground and he's beating the living daylights out of me. Lucky for me, his brother came and pulled him away because my dad couldn't do anything. There were soldiers with guns around. I held on to those sunglasses and worked my way through. We ended up going to Baghdad, and before even getting to Jordan, the bus driver took us to his home in Baghdad, and he had a 9 or 10-year-old son, more or less my age, and we became friends for the few hours that we took a pit stop there. And as a parting gift, I did give my Knight Rider sunglasses to him. He spoke Arabic, I spoke English, but it happened that way. Like that, there have been a few other, perhaps even more stronger challenges that have happened in my life, which got me to think, if I'm here on this amazing podcast with you, having the amazing experience of coming to the US and getting a great education, working in Fortune 500 companies, getting products out there, leading people, being mentored by great leaders. I have a responsibility that I dodged all those bullets, pun intended, to be here. So that gratitude of what life kind of taught me is what is the bedrock of my resilience. Me being comfortable with what makes me uncomfortable was my superpower. And I could fight through, tough situations. But I also realized that it had crossed the healthy boundary where I let people run me over. Just because I thought that I had to be strong, I had to be tough. And that has been the biggest transformation of the last 3 to 4 years, where even though I can take on more, I know what is the healthy limit to create win-win scenarios. Else I was just being bulldozed and turned into rubble. So I had a great life. I escaped a lot of tough situations. I'm grateful for that, but I'm also come to the point where I know not to overextend myself. So that's been my story of resiliency and course correction along the way. And thank you for letting me share that.
No, thank you for sharing it. I appreciate it. We all do. One thing that has come up a few different times on this podcast are boundaries. And really taking the time to understand what your boundaries are and what they should be. And it seems like that's what you had to do. You had the resilience, but defining the boundaries that make sense for you, it's important for everybody to do. Most of us never really analyze them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There is a book by Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about near misses and remote misses and how remote misses tend to make people stronger. They're things that kind of toughen you up, but they don't break you. And the near misses can sometimes break people. So I'm glad you had at least a remote enough miss that you were able to make it you stronger.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I'm very grateful for that. And thank you for quoting that. I also feel there's this other aspect, which I came across on social media, a bunch of reels and stuff that's floating around. The difference between a superhero and a supervillain. They're exactly the same person. The superhero and supervillain, exactly the same person. Both are tough. Both are resilient. Both will go beyond than the general populace. There's only one element in the DNA that distinguishes them. Would you like me to share that?
Please.
The supervillain says the world hurt me, and I'm going to hurt everyone in the world. Superhero says the world hurt me. I'm going to make sure that the world doesn't hurt anyone else. We have a choice. I think we have a choice. Everyone has a choice to make, that we can all make sure that the world doesn't hurt anyone else. So even before we become leaders, even before we try to make more money than we can ever spend and things like that, all those are great things and much more in health and all of that. I think it's a responsibility back to the tribe that we make sure that the world doesn't hurt people around us.
So we are going to develop a whole tribe of superhero leaders. I love it. Love where this is heading. All right. In the interest of time, I'm going to sadly need to start wrapping up. Can you tell everybody a little bit more about how they can find you, learn about you, and reach out?
Yeah. So I'm available on LinkedIn. That's where I do post and engage with people, trying to socially network, find out common areas where we can develop leadership principles, professional development for organizations. I work with a lot of corporations, so I am out learning, scouting, networking. And if people need help, that's how they can connect with me on LinkedIn. So Suraj Ethirajan, or you can find my company, GroUNow, spelled GROUNOW. And suraj@growunow.com is my email. So people can email me as well if they need to get in touch with me.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the show notes so people can just click on it. All right. So my 3 questions, one about travel, is where is a place you've traveled and loved? And part B, a place you have not yet been but want to go.
I see. One of my favorite places that I traveled and loved was Cozumel, right off the coast of Mexico. And mainly because snorkeled, and I love snorkeling. There's this point where you can more or less, like for 50 meters, you can swim out in the ocean and jump in. That sense of freedom. And it was more or less like 50 meters deep, the water, and just looking around, it felt like being in outer space. And I always wanted to be an astronaut in a different life, and that didn't happen. So that was the closest. From a travel perspective, that has been one of the many things that I loved.
And a place you've not yet been but want to go.
The place that I haven't been yet, and I really want to go, the ultimate place is Antarctica. So if it were up to me and if I get like 2 weeks off from work, I want to go in one of those science expeditions where you go and do some research as a research assistant just for 2 weeks, collecting samples and whatnot, exploring. That would be my ultimate thing. I do travel quite a lot with the family, and we travel to different continents. We're going to our 4th continent as a family. But going to Antarctica would be a dream come true.
Nice. Well, make it happen. You can meet Superman up there. The next question is, who do you think is a great communicator and why?
I think there are many, many good examples. I'm just going to name a few, but I'll isolate and tell you who I kind of look up to the most. So I like Simon Sinek, for sure. I like Indra Nooyi, Jim Rohn, one of my favorites of all. But I like the delivery, the specific delivery from Barack Obama. Now, I don't mean to lean politically in any given direction, but the reason why I like that is because it is easy and clear to communicate in that style and fashion. I particularly love how he segments each section in the sentence and communicates. While we don't control other people from misunderstanding us, I love the fact that we can take control over being as clear as we can. And that style is what really inspires me.
That's a good one. He is very measured in his delivery. I like it. And then finally, what's one piece of communication advice we can all benefit from?
Pause. Embracing the pause. There's no need to fill up the void. It's okay. Just release the obligation.
White space is very hard for people. The silence is tough. I was just taking a stand-up comedy class last night, actually, or yesterday. And the one piece of advice almost everybody got was slow down and leave pauses. It's very hard for people to do, but that's great advice for everybody. All right, Suraj, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining and sharing with us today.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share. What you do is great, and just excited to see how you're going to have more guests on here and succeed in all your endeavors. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to NeuroConversant Leadership. If you found this beneficial, can you do me one small favor? It'll be quick, I promise. Can you go and give this podcast a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever it is that you listen before doing anything else? Unless you're driving. If you're driving, then I need you to keep driving. And then when you're done and parked, then go ahead and give me a review. Hopefully 5 stars, but whatever you are comfortable honestly giving. Thank you and have a great day.